On today's episode, we explore the mind of Stephen Paddock.
Hi guys, and we are back with another strange or interesting tale. This tale is about a man who really seemed to be quite normal, and yet we didn't know underneath him was a ticking time bomb. This is Stephen Paddock. Now, if you're wondering, who is Stephen Paddock? Stephen Paddock is the shooter in the Las Vegas shooter case. This is the largest case thus far in the United States. There were 58 deaths and hundreds of people that were very seriously injured. Let me share this tale with you. It starts off with a music festival. It was called the Route 91 Music Festival, held in Las Vegas. It was across the street on the strip from a hotel called the Mandalay Bay. Across the street used to be like an old-time motel, and if you ever drive on the strip, you may have seen it. There was a swimming pool in this particular hotel that had little windows going around it. So that was now a parking lot, and they were going to have the festival there. And Stephen happened to be in town at that same time. Now, as far as Stephen goes, Stephen was born on April 9th, 1953 in Clintontown, Ohio. And he had pretty much of a normal life, except for his family. His mom and dad had problems. There were two other children besides Stephen. Now, they say that Stephen's mom was a really good mom, but it was the dad that had a lot of problems. The dad was just constantly in and out of trouble with the law. At one point, he had 10 felony counts for auto larceny. He was in trouble for racketeering when it came to the bingo games that he had. He was arrested, and he even escaped at one point. He was on the most wanted list. For a while, they had erased him off the most wanted list because he first went to El Paso, Texas. Once he escaped, then he ended up in Oregon, and he did a lot for Oregon, to be honest with you. But he ended up getting caught again and was in more trouble. By the time the father had left the family, Stephen was only about 7 years old. So I don't know how much his father criminality did it affect Stephen's life, because he was young. The father did pass away in 1998, and the rest of the family moved away to Los Angeles, California, where they lived and tried to make a living. It was the mom and the kids, and it was a struggle for them. They had experienced extreme poverty. Everyone trying to work to add something to what was going on. Everyone, not add what's going on, but everybody tried to work to add to the family pot so that they could sustain a particular lifestyle. It wasn't until Stephen got a little older and he got into real estate, and he started by buying these old apartment buildings and getting them fixed up. And next thing you know, they were making a lot of money. So much so that after a few years, he ended up selling some, and at least one sold for over $80 million when he didn't even pay that much for it early on in his life. One of the things that really got Stephen excited was gambling. He had this absolute love of gambling. It was the wins that made him super excited. It made him feel important about himself. Now, it wasn't that real estate didn't, but he had made all the money he wanted to make, or just about made, in housing in California. And so it was the real estate that added that extra oomph to him. He still wasn't done with buying homes, though. He bought at least 2 homes in Mesquite, Nevada, which is about 90 miles north of Las Vegas. And he didn't really live there very much because he was a strange bird. The reason he didn't like to live in those houses in Mesquite is because he didn't want his neighbors to see him. Like he was in hiding, so he didn't stay there very much. He more so liked to stay at the different hotel casinos and renting a room. So like I said, he was very, very happy with the Las Vegas lifestyle, the casinos, and he loved the poker machines. That was one of his favorites. If you've ever gambled, you know that you've got the regular slot machines and then you have the poker slot machines. And he enjoyed playing that tremendously. So much so that anytime the casinos had any promos going, he would come and they would always invite him. And in fact, he had a $100,000 credit line with the casinos. So they love to have him back. And because casinos don't make money if they're losing, they make it if they're winning. So they were beating him, and this was getting frustrated for him. So much so that he was losing a great deal of money, in a short amount of time from gambling. He even had a run-in with a casino where, at least one, and it was the Cosmopolitan Casino, where he was walking down the hallway and he slipped and fell, and he attempted to try to sue the casino for a great deal of money, but the case was dismissed. Now at this time, Stephen was getting more and more depressed, and primarily he was drinking a lot of alcohol. He was consuming a lot of alcohol. In addition to the alcohol, he was taking a lot of medications, including Valium, to help him with anxiety. He just was not stable, and the alcohol and the pills together were just combining a toxic situation. So much so that on September 15th, 2017, Stephen went to the Mandalay Bay and he got a complimentary room there. Remember, I told you he would get perks. He wasn't happy with the perks he was getting, but he took this particular perk, and he was in room 32135. And in addition to that, he decides now he wants another room. So he takes the adjacent room, 32134. And he's got both these rooms booked. But now Stephen has decided, I'm not happy. I'm going to bring in ammunition to this casino. And he stockpiles this ammunition. He had 14 and 15 rifles. He had 8 AR rifles. He had, I think, 1,000 rounds of ammunition. He had a revolver. In fact, on the 25th of September, he brought in 5 suitcases worth of ammunition. And then on September 26th, he brought in 7 more suitcases of ammunition. September 28th, he brought 2 more suitcases in. September 30th, he brought 6 more cases of ammunition in. And October 2nd, the day of the deed, he brought in 2 more bags of weaponry. Now, he and one of the valet brought it up to the room. They weren't supposed to do that. They were supposed to bring it up, or they were supposed to check it at the desk if anything that seemed suspicious, but they didn't. They let him bring it up because he had been a regular at the hotel and they didn't suspect anything of him. But on October 1st, 2017, after the room was filled up with ammunition and he had both those rooms adjacent to one another, he puts up the Do Not Disturb sign on both of those suites. He then proceeds to go downstairs. He's gambling as usual, really having a good time. He's on the surveillance. You can see him gambling. He's talking to workers there who seem to know him because he's not new. He's drinking his free drinks because he's gambling, and he seems like he's having a good time. Now, at 10 o'clock, Stephen goes back up to the suites, and he puts some L brackets, shaped like an L, it's metal, and it screws in. He put those on the door so no one could get into those rooms. Then at 10:05, he gets a hammer that he had, and he busts out 2 windows in these rooms. The rooms were adjoining, so there was a door between both the rooms, and he broke out 2 of those suite windows. Now, at this point, there is a security guard that's walking around, and he hears this drilling and this breaking of glass, and he's beating on the door and asking, what are you doing? What's going on? And Stephen, in turn, shoots through the door, hits the guy, hits him in the thigh. He doesn't kill him, hits him in the thigh, and this security goes to call the police. Now, immediately after that, the people that are at this festival, the festival is outside. There is hundreds of people, thousands of people out there to this particular festival. And they start hearing what they thought was fireworks. They thought that there were fireworks being set off on the Strip in Las Vegas. If you know Las Vegas, if you've been there like myself, they don't just set off random fireworks though. They do it for like New Year's, okay? And sometimes 4th of July. But they do it on top of the casinos, not down on the ground floor. So being that the rooms were up on the 32nd floor, of course it sounded like it could have been fireworks, but it was not. People began to hit the floor, hit the ground, trying to protect themselves, and randomly getting shot everywhere. Now, about 10:17, the police figure out that they don't know at first where these shots are coming from, because the police have to be there. Of course, it's such a big event. They realize that the shots are coming from the Mandalay Bay. They get to the hotel because the security has already called the police, and it's chaos. They get to the hotel, and they see the security that had actually called them to begin with, and he tells them what's going on and what room that Stephen is in. And then around 10:26 to 10:30, 8 more cops have now gotten to the hotel, and the gunshots have stopped. The gunshots lasted about somewhere between 8 to 10 minutes. It was just random shooting out into the people that were in the particular audience outside of this venue. About 11 o'clock, the police are able to reach the room of Stephen. And it's quiet, and they're all armed, and they are working, and they break into the door. It's got the L brackets on. He didn't want anyone in those rooms. They break in, and only to find Stephen laying on the floor with a gunshot to his head. And they just had an arsenal of guns all over the place between those two rooms. As sad as that was, and it couldn't get any sadder and horrific, I want to know what would cause a man like Stephen to just snap. As I look at Stephen Paddock, I see his birthday, like I said, is April 9th, 1953. And 2017 was a number 1 year. So when I look at his 9, the 4, and the 1 of the new year, or the universal year 2017, that says it was a number 5 year. And I tell people all the time, 5 is very severe, and number 5 lessons is life lessons. They're tough and hard lessons, and Stephen was doing that. He was really learning a lot of lessons about self, but he couldn't see himself because he was living in a haze of alcohol and pills, so he clearly couldn't see himself, and he needed to learn about money and money loss and what was valued. And here he is, all this money that he had made, and he was throwing it away on the gambling tables. He had addictions. His alcohol was addiction. The pills were addiction. Buying homes was an addiction. Gambling was an addiction. He had an addictive nature. His life path is a number 4, which is a good life path. It speaks about being a very stable, hardworking, productive, tidy, organized, managerial type of person, except if it's ill-dignified. And because of his particular circumstances growing up with his mother there, his father, which he knew of his criminality up until at least he was 7 years old, and I'm sure they would have talked about that as well, that would have made it tough for him. It would have made him, instead of being organized and tidy, he would have been a big mess. Instead of being detailed and a collector, he would be a hoarder. And if you look at the number of guns that he brought in to this casino, he was definitely a hoarder, but he was a hoarder of guns. He was a hoarder of hurt and pain that he kept inside of himself as well. When I look at his natal, his rising is in Cancer. So here we're talking about a very sensitive guy who on the outside seemed as though he was quiet, mild-mannered, shy, took a while to warm up to you, but underneath he was actually an Aries. So that would make him very impulsive. So if his emotions felt a certain way or went a certain way, he would run in that direction looking for a fix, a cure, something. Very impulsive. His moon is in Aquarius. That only tells me that he liked things like traveling long distance, or his the last female he was with was a lady that was actually living in the Philippines, which that would appeal to him because it's something unique and it's a different culture. It's outside the box. He would love that. But what really showed me a lot about him is his Pisces in Mercury. His Pisces in Mercury would really be a detrimental placement. You've got Mercury, which is about fast moving, logic, get it done, solve things on your feet, quick moving. And you've got that Pisces, which is lost in that emotions.